They're coming for everything that you love. They're coming for everything that makes you happy. They're coming for everything that gives you joy and satisfaction and connection and pride and community. And they're coming for your sports teams. They're coming for your movies. They're coming for your music.
Oh, say, can you see?
The joyless brigade of happiness-eating zombies are coming, and they're not going to stop. They will continue to erase your history. They will continue to strip down everything that you love and that makes you proud of where you came from. Oh, do you like Shakespeare? Sorry, just an old white racist dude. Ooh, do you like Dickens? Do you like Beethoven? Do you like John Locke? No. They were hidebound. They supported this, that, or the other. It was all imperialism and evil and nastiness and terror. I mean, it's just natural. This is the corrosive effect that this kind of rampant hostility has towards a particular culture. You know, other cultures, other worldviews are always trying to storm the ramparts of the West, of the good. And it is a terrible thing to see. And unfortunately, we just have to pick up the cultural weapons and fight back. You know, whatever you subsidize, you're going to get more of. And if race baiting, gender baiting, hostility and rage and contempt and aggression and action against the society gets paid, well then, you know, if you get a riot, oh look, let's spend more on welfare. Let's open up a youth center. Let's settle with people who've done egregious things with multi-million-dollar lawsuits and so on. So you keep paying for stuff. The more that you pay people who whine and rage and complain, the more of those people you're going to get. And at some point, the vending machine of white guilt has got to run dry. You know, if you keep pounding white people with racist, sexist, and so on, and we keep coughing up resources to make this pounding go away, we're just going to get more and more of it. They're interested in power. They're not interested in conversation, which is why they're sophists. Like a sophist is someone who doesn't want to provide you with information, doesn't want to empower you, but wants to control you by inflicting emotionally charged and often bullying conclusions on everything that you say to try and frighten you into self-censorship. You know, America with the First Amendment, it's pretty tough to censor people legally, but you can keep attacking them. You can try and destroy the source of their income. You can attack them all over the place. And that way you can get people to self-censor. And of course, you have to resist that. That is the fear of ostracism that we have to overcome. The left knows that people who aren't leftists are sensitive to ostracism, are sensitive to how they're perceived socially, and they use that to attack you. And we have to resist that and say that the bad opinion of bad people is a badge of honor. And we have to be less sensitive to that. You know, there have been horrible fights throughout history to try and make the world a more free place. And the fact that we have to basically deal with mean typing on the internet makes it about the easiest battle we've ever had to face. You know, look at the Somme in World War I or the Civil War or whatever you want to. I mean, the amount of bloodshed that has been spilled for freedom. Now all we have to do is get over, you know, mean tweets, and we have to fight that kind of war. Oh, no, they might say something mean about me. Well, I think people are waking up to the fact that if bad people are saying bad things about you, that puts you on the sunny side of the field. I want to just imagine this scenario. So you're straight, but imagine you live in a society where you have to every day pretend that you're gay. You got to marry to a guy, or if you're gay, you got to pretend that you're straight. No, that's happened in the past. If you have to falsify everything about yourself just to get through the day, that is a hideous existence that anybody with a shred of integrity finds at the very bottom of the Dantean levels of hell. So if we lose and we're not allowed to speak our minds and we're not allowed to be honest, we're not allowed to engage in debate, we have to falsify everything about ourselves every day. We have to pretend and mouth slogans. We pretend to conform to and mouth slogans that we find despicable. We have to kneel down before mediocrities and non-entities and idiots. And we have to live in fear of negative repercussions just for being honestly and authentically ourselves. Anybody who doesn't find that a literal hell is not somebody who's even worthy of being free. To have to lie and bow and scrape and falsify means you can't ever be honest with anyone. You can't experience love because love is around truth and honesty and virtue. You can't be loved. You can't tell the truth to your children. You've got to shut up at the family dinner table. You've got to kowtow to ridiculous slogans that are so illogical. It's completely ridiculous. And you have to falsify everything, live in fear, live as a slave, live as taxed livestock so that your productivity gets grabbed off and shoveled off to people who are going to vote for more and more people to oppress you. You'll never be able to tell the truth. You'll never be able to be honest. You'll never be able to be authentic. And that is what a zombie life is like. No truth, no honor, no dignity, no love, no virtue. That is the kind of living death we are condemned to at an emotional level if we lose. And that's why I'll do almost anything to win.
That old wheel is gonna roll around once more. When it does, it will even up the score.
Don't be weak. As they sow, they will reap. Turn the other cheek and don't give in. That old wheel will roll around again.
President Trump sowed confusion on the Russia investigation. He asked why the media are not covering, quote, money from Russia to Clinton for the sale of uranium. Well, here's why. No credible source alleges that Hillary Clinton was paid by Russia for American uranium.
Congressional Republicans say there is evidence that something was amiss when the U.S. gave up a significant block of its uranium mining capability to a Russian-controlled company with ties to Hillary Clinton and the Clinton Foundation.
You said there's about $145 million in kickbacks to the Clinton Foundation total?
Yeah, that's right. $145 million that we know about comes from a variety of sources, but it's basically 9 shareholders in this Uranium One company. It started when the Clintons helped this Canadian billionaire acquire uranium assets in Kazakhstan. Bill Clinton went over there. He sweet-talked the dictator Nazarbayev. What was Hillary Clinton's role? Well, we actually have testimony in the form of a deposition from the guy running the Kazakh uranium program at the time, Mukhtar Zakashev, and he says that the Kazakh prime minister went to the U.S. Senate, wanted to meet with Hillary Clinton, and she refused to meet with him until the uranium concession was granted. We already have testimony from foreign government officials that there was pressure. We know that as soon as Justra got this uranium concession, he sent his first donation ever, $30 million to the Clinton Foundation, and it sort of took off from there. So when Hillary Clinton says in 2010, a couple of years later, Uranium One, this Russia deal, I didn't know anything about it, she was intimately involved with this company over the last 5 years. And we have testimony of foreign officials saying so.
The average person watching in America knows that it's very suspicious when you have the United States government, the State Department approving 20% transfer of our uranium, and then around the same time, the Hillary Clinton Foundation is getting $145 million, not from Joe Blow from Idaho. They're getting that money from 9 Uranium One investors.
Back in 2009, they were well aware of money laundering, kickbacks connected to the Russian uranium industry and connected to firms here inside, inside the United States. So one of the things that they're going to be looking for is those connections and where did that money go and who they were bribing. And how real a national security threat was this? I mean, was this just kind of covered up? Because remember, nobody back then actually knew. There was an ongoing investigation, so it was really up to the FBI.
We have an FBI informant in this case who infiltrated this Putin network right here in America.
And the informant, the confidential informant, spent 4 years undercover. And it was like 4 years before any charges were brought against these players.
He has evidence. He has emails. He has personal recordings. He has documents. He has insider knowledge of all this, that America's national security was in fact compromised at the highest level.
The 2010 deal is under new scrutiny after an FBI confidential informant came forward, claiming there is evidence Russia sought to curry favor with then Secretary of State Clinton and her husband through the Clinton Foundation. A gag order may soon be lifted.
We're in contact with the Justice Department to release him from a non-disclosure agreement.
Victoria, let's start with what we were asking for last night has now come out. That, in fact, the NDA, the non-disclosure.
Here it is.
And we were told he knew in 2009 and 2010, before the Uranium One deal was done, that he had overwhelming evidence, that he had emails, that he had documents, that he has tapes that would show the bribery, the racketeering, the corruption, the money laundering and extortion. Is that what we expect to hear?
Yes, he can give context, and he can tell about conversations the Russians had about what they were doing with various piles of money.
For 4 years, this FBI informant, Victoria's client, worked undercover, and he discovered a network, if you will, evidence that showed not only did they use money laundering, kickbacks, bribery, extortion, but that they also had the evidence that this was a network that was being built and designed by Moscow and Vladimir Putin to corner uranium market in this country. He knew that. He knew that at the time. Is that what you're saying?
That's
and to
exactly
peddle
what I'm
influence,
saying.
and to peddle influence with the State Department and the Clintons.
The color of money that was raining down during this period was noticeably red. It was coming from Moscow.
Victoria, your client is saying, just so we're clear, that the president was made aware in 2009 of all of the bribery, all of the kickbacks, all of the extortion, all of the money laundering, and Vladimir Putin's intention to corner the American uranium market. Am I getting that right?
You are. Well, the FBI told him that that was true. Now, were they fibbing? I doubt it. If they were being very specific about, we're giving it to the president in his daily briefing. And that was prior to October 2010 when the CFIUS decision was made.
And Mueller and Rosenstein, they knew about it, but they're now investigating Trump-Russia collusion? Isn't there a little conflict there?
Yeah, it's really, really bizarre.
I've been working on a project just putting all the different monies that came in from Russia. It's over $40 million over a 2-3 year period going to people around the Clintons. That can't be an accident.
Donald Trump Jr. takes one meeting a year and a half ago that resulted in nothing. He came on the front page then of Time magazine with the word traitor. They called him a traitor for nearly a month straight.
This is about corruption, it's about collusion and potentially treasonous activity. Members of the Obama administration at the cabinet level, as there was an FBI investigation of racketeering on uranium by Russia in America, approved this deal. Hillary Clinton approved a deal that would give 20% of our uranium to a nation like Russia that supports rogue regimes. This is massive.
As I point out in the book, and anybody can go to WikiLeaks and look at, there were State Department cables classified that came out in WikiLeaks that were going to Hillary Clinton, top secret, that were talking about the fact that the Russians were looking to corner the world uranium market. They were active in Kazakhstan, they were active elsewhere, and that it was a strategic goal of Vladimir Putin to try to grab as much of the world uranium market as possible. So she was informed about this, she knew about this, and apparently didn't care.
When the Clinton corruption case is finally laid to rest, when this criminal cartel pays the ultimate penalty for what they did to America's national security, we're going to forget Watergate ever happened.
Laws potentially broken in the Uranium One deal. Let's put them up on the screen so our audience can understand it. Explain. Let's start there, because we sold out national security.
This is huge. The first 6 statutes on the screen are the anti-corruption pay-to-play statutes. You cannot use your public office, Secretary of State, to confer a benefit to a foreign government in exchange for money. The evidence appears to be there. And because she used her charity, allegedly, that would be racketeering, which, the government goes after organized crime and the mafia for that.
Now, remember, 2009, we knew about lies and bribes and kickbacks and extortion, money laundering, and racketeering, and they still allowed the deal through. But anyway, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission gave assurances the raw nuclear fuel would never be exported out of this country.
Rosatom, the Russian state atomic agency, is not like our Department of Energy. Rosatom in Russia, it controls the Russian nuclear arsenal. It is involved in nuclear programs in Iran, North Korea, and elsewhere. So it's not a surprise. It's not a surprise that if you give them control of uranium assets, they're not going to worry about export licenses or promises that they made to the Obama administration about what they were going to use with their uranium. It's just laughable.
The Nuclear Regulatory Commission confirmed to the New York Times that huge quantities of yellowcake uranium, the composite dust material that's used for nuclear weapons, left the United States to Canada, where it was then shipped overseas.
Why in the hell would anybody approve the sale of 20% of America's uranium to Vladimir Putin and the bad actor he is and the hostile regime Russia, government approved by Hillary Clinton, Eric Holder, other high-ranking officials in the Obama administration?
Yeah, this yellowcake, was transported overseas, and there's a lot of concern. There's a lot of concern that they weren't weren't able to track it. So what happened if that was sold to an enemy state? What happened if some of that yellow cake disappeared?
Iran comes to mind.
If this had happened in the 1950s, there would be people up on treason charges right now. The Rosenbergs, okay? This is equivalent to what the Rosenbergs did, and those people got the chair. Think about it. Giving away nuclear capability to our enemies, that's what we're talking about.
Now we know why Hillary Clinton deleted all those emails when we learn more and more about this uranium deal.
Are people going to jail this time? Is this it?
I would suspect so. And people.
And the kickbacks to the Clintons and the Clinton Foundation?
Somebody's got to go to jail over this, and not just the one who's been convicted and clammed
Who are
up.
the top people that are in jeopardy?
Well, I think Hillary Clinton, anybody at the DNC.
Eric Holder?
James Comey in particular, because, he may have abused his office, and he could have done it for...
Mueller? Mueller knew.
No, covering it up to cry to Congress.
He should recuse himself. He should have recused
his duty. He should recuse himself.
Same with Rosenstein.
Absolutely. And Jeff Sessions needs to get off his duff and appoint a special counsel to investigate.
Immediately.
Hillary Clinton, Comey, Loretta Lynch.
Everybody.
Everybody.
I wrote my Boston Herald column just a few days ago that I think Bob Mueller needs to recuse himself, because how can we have a special prosecutor aggressively going after the Trump administration and the Trump campaign associates, while on his watch, while he ran the FBI, he overlooked the pay-to-play between Uranium One and $140 million going to the Clinton Foundation. He also overlooked a Russian bank paying Bill Clinton $500,000 for a one-hour speech, and also Bill Clinton met with Putin personally right before this deal went down. So if none of that, crossed his radar, he let all that go by, and he also let John Podesta's Russian financial entanglements go under his radar. And now we're supposed to believe that he's impartial, going after Donald Trump and his family and his associates so relentlessly.
If the FBI has an ongoing criminal probe involving a fact pattern, and they don't share it with the decision makers who are deciding whether or not to sell percentages of uranium leases in this country, then we have a problem. And I want to know what the FBI and the DOJ knew and who they shared it with.
Meanwhile, the ranking Democrat on the House Intel Committee, the liberal hack Adam Schiff, wants you to believe that this is all just a partisan distraction driven by the Fox News channel Breitbart in the White House. Watch this.
Why shouldn't the uranium deal be investigated?
Well, it'd be one thing if this was being done in good faith, but of course it's not. This is a partisan effort to distract. It's a partisan effort aligned with what the White House has been urging, and Fox and Breitbart, and which there was no consultation with the Democrats in Congress.
Remember, this whole uranium thing comes from Fox News.
So the question is, how did they get away with it, and do you think they slide this time?
The Clintons are escape artists that would make Houdini proud. Whenever they are caught dangling their feet over the edge of illegality, they usually dummy up. Hillary Clinton, I'll give you an example, interviewed by the FBI, said 39 times, "I cannot recall." It was so short because she could only recall her name and date of birth. She pretends like she's dumber than a bucket of hair when it serves her purpose, and the brightest person in the room when
Two U.S. officials with direct knowledge tell NBC News that briefing materials prepared for the president-elect himself included information making damaging allegations about his dealings with Russians. BuzzFeed publishing a dossier sourced to a person who claims to be a former member of British intelligence. Inside the pages are claims that the Russian government has been cultivating, supporting, and assisting the president-elect for 5 years, even gaining compromising information about him in an effort to blackmail him.
It claims that Donald Trump once visited Russia, stayed in the Ritz-Carlton in Moscow,
and then hired prostitutes to perform a golden shower.
We already know that the part about the coverage that they have on him with sex actions is supposed to be true.
Whoever paid for it has corroborated a lot of the information that was in there to begin with.
NBC News has confirmed reporting by the Washington Post that the Clinton campaign and the DNC, the Democratic National Committee, helped fund that research that ultimately produced the now infamous dossier on Donald Trump.
This was the Republicans' baby, and they funded it. An unknown Republican donor funded this dossier. And then, after Donald Trump won the nomination, Democrats picked it up.
The conservative website, the Washington Free Beacon, funded the original Fusion GPS research into Donald Trump.
The Washington Free Beacon said tonight it has approached the House Intelligence Committee to answer questions about the money the conservative news outlet paid to the firm Fusion GPS in 2015 and 2016 for the purpose of conducting research into the life of then-candidate Donald Trump. All of the work that Fusion GPS provided to the Free Beacon was based on public sources, and none of the work product that the Free Beacon received appears in the Steele dossier, said Free Beacon founders and editors Matt Continetti and Michael Goldfarb. The Free Beacon had no knowledge of or connection to the Steele dossier, did not pay for the dossier, and never had contact with, knowledge of, or provided payment for any work performed by Christopher Steele.
The law firm Perkins Coie, which represented the Clinton campaign and the DNC, retained Fusion GPS in April of 2016 to conduct opposition research.
Now, the Steele dossier was compiled for Fusion GPS by this man, former British spy Christopher Steele, whose research into Mr. Trump in 2016 reportedly included interviews with top Russian spies and diplomats. The Steele dossier brimmed with highly salacious rumors about Mr. Trump, but its contents went unverified, even as the dossier landed in the hands of U.S. lawmakers, the FBI, and various news outlets. BuzzFeed published the contents en toto in January. The Washington Post disclosed last week that the Steele dossier was bankrolled by the Hillary Clinton campaign and the Democratic National Committee. So what apparently began as a Republican-funded effort to discredit Mr. Trump on the basis of publicly available sources ended early in 2016, was picked up by the Clinton campaign and the DNC, and became an effort to unearth private information from Moscow. All of this is significant, of course, because for more than a year, leading Democrats have alleged collusion between the Trump campaign and the Kremlin, and the special counsel's probe has been examining that allegation. The disclosures about the funding of the Steele dossier suggest it was the Democrats seeking to benefit from Russian intervention.
We now know that the Clinton campaign, the DNC, paid over $9 million to help fund these lies, this propaganda hit piece that the Russian government sources gave them.
Correct. And, this is a standard practice of all campaigns, including the, Republican campaigns.
It wouldn't be a surprise to anyone that the DNC and the Clinton campaign were funding this. It contained allegations about their opponent in this.
Donald Trump Jr. takes one meeting a year and a half ago that resulted in nothing. He came on the front page then of Time magazine with the word traitor. They called him a traitor for nearly a month straight. He had to then testify many times in front of senators in a closed session. And now you have all these new developments that Hillary Clinton actually sold out something of value for $110 million to her foundation. She says, oh, I knew nothing about that.
This is how opposition research works.
This story is not about opposition research.
That dossier, which is totally fake and made up, it's like a novel, but that dossier is a disgrace, and it should not have been allowed to be used.
Maggie Haberman, she tweeted, quote, folks involved in funding this lied about it, and with sanctimony for a year.
Your team paying for this opposition research, and Donald Trump's people working with the Russians to influence the election. Is there a difference?
Of course there is. And, I think most serious people understand that. This was research started by a Republican donor during the Republican primary. And then when Trump got the nomination for the Republican Party, the people doing it came to my campaign lawyer and said, would you like us to continue it?
Right.
And he said yes.
There is a difference between her paying for the dossier and Trump, Russia so-called collusion, but not in the way she means. What she did appears to have been a crime. It's a crime to give money to a foreign national in a political campaign. That's what she did. It's not a crime for Donald Trump Jr. to talk to a Russian lawyer or George Papadopoulos to talk to a Russian during the campaign.
This is different. This isn't, oh, I've got information, do you want to hear it? This is, I'm paying for the false information.
Right. It's the exchange of money that the law prohibits.
Should the Democrats have come clean on this months ago?
Well, you know, truly, Chris, it's op research. It's what any campaign engages in.
No, but should they have come clean during this massive investigation with all the focus on the Russian connection of Donald Trump? Why wouldn't the Democrats come out and say, okay, we paid for it, instead of letting it leak out now when it now brings into question the whole effort? Why weren't they clean? Why did they hide this? Why did Hillary Clinton hide this?
Well, I don't know that Hillary Clinton hid it, or was it just her attorney who was
She paid
thinking
for
of
it.
Look at the writing yesterday by Molly Hemingway at The Federalist. How many stories are out there in the media that came from Fusion GPS? This isn't just the only story. They were working hand in glove with the liberal media. Your audience needs to know that Fusion GPS was making stuff up about President Trump and feeding it to other journalists.
Do you believe anything about that dossier?
Oh, I think it should be taken a look at. I think they should really read it, understand it, analyze it. What I have learned or I've heard about the dossier, it's about his involvement with women. It's about possibly prostitutes that are involved in those kinds of things.
No, it's about Hillary and the DNC paying for Russian lies, and you in the media, and you in politics and the Democratic Party then spreading lies.
The only reason we have Mueller investigating the president today is why? Because James Comey briefed the dossier to the president, and within minutes that was leaked to CNN.
Meanwhile, new information shows the FBI used a controversial dossier of alleged contacts between President Trump and Russian agents as evidence for a secret surveillance warrant.
Right now, we have to have the AG cancel Mueller's mandate because the dossier was full of Russian propaganda from Russian agents and was fallacious. It was a lie.
All right.
Mueller is culpable.
But you think Mueller is culpable?
Yes, without a doubt.
He knew.
Without a doubt.
He had to know.
He had to know.
And Eric Holder knew. And Eric Holder signed off on the deal.
He had to know that this was a bogus dossier. He had to know it because he knew the sources. Secondly, why was he paying Michael Steele? Why was the FBI paying Michael Steele?
for the phony dossier, the propaganda, the misinformation, and the lies that were fed to the American people that were tried to be used, the Russian phony dossier, to influence an election.
As someone who worked in law enforcement for over 3 decades, what they have done is stunning. If this Trump dossier is the basis of FISA warrants and the unmasking of Americans and was used knowingly, funded by the Clinton campaign, and Jim Comey is the guy who goes out when it's not his job, Tom, and makes a decision that he's going to exonerate Hillary, I mean, then the whole criminal justice system falls on its head.
You can't pay millions of dollars to foreign nationals because that's against the federal election laws you can see there. And you can't hide it by filing false or misleading reports. Now, I've been hearing Democrats say, oh, those are just civil penalties. They are not. The government produces a book. It's 319 pages outlining the federal election laws and all those who have been criminally prosecuted and ended up in prison.
There's James Comey using that disinformation to create a special prosecutor trigger that is used to investigate the president.
If, in fact, the dossier was the basis upon which a FISA warrant was issued, you're talking about a whole host of legal issues that Greg will have to do another chart, because you're talking about going to a court, which is a FISA court is a court, and getting a warrant to basically eavesdrop, tap, listen in on conversations based on a document that was not only unverified, as James Comey said, by the way, and salacious and unverified, his own words, but ask this question. Why was the FBI considering paying for it at some point in this process.
Now, there's also another major component to this story we cannot discount. The FBI, the Department of Justice, have not been cooperating with congressional Republicans in their attempts to find out more information about this fake news dossier and the group that is behind it, Fusion GPS.
The Democrats clearly wanted this information coming from the intelligence community. If people believed that it was coming from Democratic sources, and Mark Elias was definitely behind this, we've confirmed, it wouldn't look as good.
Now, when the New York Times starts literally calling Clinton's team liars, you know it's bad.
The Democrats have been fighting us every step of the way to find out who paid for the dossier and whether or not it was relied upon. Yesterday, they went 15 years back in time to talk about apartment leases and bank loans, but they're not interested in who paid for the dossier and whether or not it was relied upon. So I'll be back this morning in a skiff on the Russia investigation trying to get answers.
What is so damaging here is that people's faith in our top law enforcement agencies, like the FBI, it's totally undercut when they behave this way.
I want to know whether the nation's premier law enforcement agency relied on a document that looks like the National Enquirer prepared it.
Well, can you answer that question today? Did the FBI rely on it or not?
You know, Bill, I think I can, but I want to be able to prove it.
To the extent the FBI and Justice Department used this dossier as a pretext to spy on President Trump's team or President Trump himself, this is much more significant government scandal in terms of the Obama administration, the Justice Department, and the FBI than, frankly, anything Hillary Clinton did.
Think about this. I was a former federal investigator. This is not a joke now. You had bogus, spurious information, potentially fed from the Russians, into our FBI that was used in a presidential daily brief. The president was briefed on fake Russian information.
Under the supervision of the National Intelligence Director, James Clapper, while briefed by the FBI Director, James Comey. I think you should be aware of this. There might be some leverage used against you once you assume office.
And I'll take this to the second point here, too. You're right. If this information was used, God forbid, in a judicial document to get a warrant to tap anyone or on the Trump campaign, I mean, you want to hear about a scandal? The FBI used fake Russian.
We currently have a $20 trillion debt. And you might ask yourself, whose fault is it? Republicans or Democrats? The easy answer is both. Both parties are equally responsible, equally culpable, and equally guilty of ignoring the debt, ignoring the spending problem, and really, I think, allowing our country to rot from the inside out. This year, the debt will be $700 billion. The deficit will be $700 billion for just 1 year for our country. $700 billion. We borrow about $1 million a minute. Under George W. Bush, the debt went from $5 trillion to $10 trillion. Under President Obama, it went from $10 trillion to $20 trillion. It's doubling under Republicans and Democrats. So right now, we're in the midst of another spending frenzy. Now, people will say, well, we're spending the money for something good. We're going to help those in Puerto Rico and those in Texas and those in Florida. My point is if you're going to spend money to help someone in need, maybe we should take it from another area of spending that's less in need. I think that just simply borrowing it, even for something that you can argue is compassionate, is really foolhardy and may make us weaker as a nation. Admiral Mullins put it this way. He said that the number one threat to our national security is our debt. In fact, most people who follow world politics, while we do have problems around the world, don't really see us being invaded anytime soon by an army or an armada. But people do see the burden of debt. So what we have before us is a bill, $36 billion. Much of it's going to Puerto Rico and Texas and Florida. My request is very simple. We should pay for it. About a month ago, we had $15 billion for the same purposes. We are set in all likelihood, to have over $100 billion spent on these hurricanes. I simply ask that we take it from some spending item that seems to be less pressing. I mean, we could go through a list of hundreds and hundreds of items, but one thing I would think that we could start with why don't we quit sending money to countries that burn our flag? So if you are a country and you are saying death to America, burning the American flag, maybe we shouldn't give you any money. We give money to Pakistan. We trade and sell arms with most of the Middle East that don't like us. And we do this with borrowed money. We don't even have the money we're sending. But we could make the burden a little less if we would say, you know what, let's don't give any money to countries that hate us, to any country that's burning our flag. In Pakistan, there's a Christian woman by the name of Asia Bibi. She's been on death row for 5 years for being a Christian. She went to the well to draw water, and the women of the village began chanting, "Death, death to the Christian," as she was being beaten and pummeled on the ground and thought she was going to die. The police finally show up, and they thought they were there to rescue her. They were there to imprison her. They took her off to prison. That was 5 years ago. Not easy being a Christian in the Middle East. In Pakistan, there was a doctor who helped us to get bin Laden. His name is Afridi. He's been in jail now for about 5-6 years also. So he helped get us information that helped us to target bin Laden and finally get this great enemy of our country. The Pakistanis put him in jail for helping us. The Pakistanis help us one day and stab us in back the next day. The Taliban, when they were defeated under President Obama, when he put 100,000 troops in there, they scurried off into Pakistan. They have a sanctuary, and then they come back. I think we ought to think twice about sending money to countries that burn our flag, sending money to countries that persecute Christians, sending monies to countries that frankly don't even like us. We spend about $30 billion helping other countries. Well, you know, if you were going to help your neighbor, if your neighbor was without food, would you first feed your children? If you had a little money left over, help the children next door? That's what most people would do. If you're going to give money to your church or your synagogue, would you go to the bank and borrow the money to give to somebody? Would that be compassionate or foolhardy? Is it compassionate to borrow money to give it to someone else? So people here will say they have great compassion and they want to help the people of Puerto Rico and the people of Texas and the people of Florida. But notice they have great compassion with someone else's money. Ask them if they're giving any money to Puerto Rico. Ask them if they're giving money to Texas. Ask them what they're doing to help their fellow man. And you'll find often that it's easy to be compassionate with someone else's money. But it's not only that. It's not only compassion with someone else's money. It's compassion with money that doesn't even exist, money that's borrowed. Of the $20 trillion we owe, China holds $1 trillion of that. And all this might be said, and you might say, well, we just have to help people. That's just, you're worrying too much, and you have to talk about details, and really all the money's being well spent. Well, if you look back at money that's been spent before in disasters, guess what? People replace everything, including things that weren't broken. I remember in Katrina, a family that was holed up in a beachside resort for weeks, taxpayer money. They could have put them up across the street for about $60 or $50 a night. They were staying in a $400 a night beachside resort with government money, with FEMA money. I think we have to look at how well government spends money. You want an example of how well government spends money? Last year, we had some great science. There's a lot of great taxpayer-funded science going on. They wanted to study whether or not Neil Armstrong, when he set foot on the moon, whether he said one small step for mankind or whether he said one small step for a man. So it's either one small step for man or one small step for a man. They wanted to know if the preposition a was in there. So they took some money that was actually intended for a good purpose to study autism, and they studied Neil Armstrong's statement when he landed on the moon, $700,000. In the NIH last year, they spent $2 million studying whether or not if someone in front of you in the buffet line sneezes on the food, are you more or less likely to eat the food that's been sneezed on? I think we could have polled the audience on that one. They spent $300,000 studying whether Japanese quail are more sexually promiscuous on cocaine? I think we could probably just assume yes. This kind of stuff goes on year after year. You think, oh, those are aberrations, that's new. William Proxmire was a senator, a conservative Democrat back in the day, and he used to do something called the Golden Fleece Award. He would put out these awards. They sound exactly the same as the stuff we're finding now. We spent money studying the gambling habits of Ugandans. We've studied how to prepare the Philippines for climate change. You name it, we're studying it around the world with money we don't have. I mean, if you want to make the argument, oh, we're running a surplus, we're a great country, we're going to help all the other countries of the world, I would actually listen to you if we're running a surplus. But we're not. We're running a $700 billion debt. We borrow $1 million a minute. And we got a lot of rich people here. You know what we ought to do is ask these rich senators, what are you giving to Puerto Rico? What are you giving to Texas? Instead, they're giving your money. They're really not even giving your money. They're giving money they borrowed. So what am I asking? Not that we not do this. What I'm asking is that, well, why don't we take it from something we shouldn't be doing? Or why don't we try to conserve? So if you decided you wanted to help the people next door, you might say, you know, I'm not going to the movie theater. I'm not going to go to the Broadway play. I'm not going to the NFL game. I'm going to save money by cutting back on my expenses so that I can help the people next door that are struggling, the father or mother out of work, and they need my help. But you wouldn't go to the bank and ask for a loan to help people. That's not the way it works, unless you're a government, and then common sense goes out the window, and you just spend money right and left because you're compassionate. You've got a big heart because you've got the ability of the Federal Reserve just to print up more money.
Bid farewell to old Kentucky, the place where I was born and raised, the place where he was born and raised.
It began in earnest with the focus by the media on brain injury, concussion, suicide, early death of players in the National Football League. The effort here that is underway is to destroy the NFL or weaken it to the point of taking it over. And I don't think the people that work at the NFL have any idea what's happening here, because many of them are themselves Democrats. And they, I don't think, understand the full intentions of the extreme activists. What we see is a protest against the flag. What we see is a protest against America led by Colin Kaepernick. But that's not what's driving this. What's driving this is a desire to damage the NFL. And because the NFL represents so much of what the left hates. If you're not aware of just how ideological the left is and its objectives are, then hearing the truth of them and their intentions can be, come on, Russ, that can't possibly be true. But it is. And there's evidence all over our country that what I'm going to say is true in other venues. On college campus today, you can easily sign up for a course on the demasculinization of American culture. It's a combination of efforts brought about by feminists and other uber-leftists who wish to create division in the country while slashing and chipping away at what they have considered the unfair power base that has run this country since the days of our founding. White Christians would be one way to characterize that group. White men would be another way to characterize that group, but it is an assault on the traditions and institutions that define the country and its greatness and that have sustained it. They have successfully attacked and redefined marriage. They have moved on now to transgender things that confuse bathroom use. All of this is to divide people, and it's to set up one side with the moral high ground and the other side the oppressors, and they need to be silenced. There is an effort here to attack the NFL because the NFL has direct roots to patriotism, masculinity. It is all man. It is a man's game. It is played by men, and there aren't too many men who can play it at the professional level. It's an attack on all of those institutions that the left thinks need to be erased in our culture so that we can have what they claim to want is a fair and equal and diverse society. Now, all of that may say, you kidding, Russ, they don't want to take out the NFL. Yes, they do, folks, because it stands as a strong and powerful signal of what they still have yet left to do. It also is a pile of money. The NFL is a giant pile of money that can be shaken down with lawsuits, the threat of lawsuits. The NFL can be accused of killing its employees just by being in business. There's any number of ways that they're going about this. It's underway, and the current iteration of this got started. The Kaepernick taking a knee provided the opportunity for leftists to seize control of this and use it and expand it beyond whatever Kaepernick's intentions were. He has become the face of it. He has become the victim example of the horrible unfairness and racism of the ownership and the league. The sports media falls right in line and paints that very picture. The sports media is covering the NFL in a way that makes the league impossible to look good and to shine and to grow. What people don't understand about the left, they don't understand live and let live. There's no such thing. Anything that exists outside of what they think should exist is going to be attacked, and they're going to try to damage it or destroy it. This is not about bringing people together. It's not about having people be permitted to protest using their constitutional rights over police brutality. That's what you're to think this is about. What it's about is making this league look bad. It's about creating an image and an aura that it's dangerous and that it's risky and maybe it shouldn't be played. And already you see parents of junior high school students and high school students not letting their kids play football now. You see even some players retiring at age 25 after they see movies.
I found a disease that no one has ever seen. Repetitive head trauma chokes the brain. You're going to war with a corporation that owns a day of the week.
The effort is constant, but the main thing they have done, they've taken the fun and the joy out of the game. They have taken the mystique out of the game, and the league is right in there unwittingly helping them. There's simply no way for a business to grow. The NFL permitting its employees to do what they've been doing since Kaepernick got it started. People don't watch the NFL for signs of equality and diversity and fairness and social justice. They watch it for the mystique. They watch it for the magic, the athletic abilities of these people to do things that we can't do.
He won't go down. No, he's dancing his way.
But now they've added a guilt to all of this. They have added this idea that you're enjoying this carnage? You're enjoying this barbaric display of cruelty? More and more people can't escape it once the media begins covering that aspect of it. You can try when you watch a game, pull that stuff out of your mind. You see a hard hit. Oh, is he dead? That is not conducive to the business growing. It's not about the flag. They want you to think it is. And it's not about police brutality. They want you to think it is. We are in the midst of an all-out assault on the National Football League. Not just the game of football, but the National Football League. In fact, if you look carefully now, you can begin to see stories that I predicted 2 years were going to happen, which are these. Look who suffers the majority of these injuries. African Americans, 75% of the league. Look who's suffering these injuries. Look who's being forced to play this game in order to earn a living. And then look in the owner's box, and who is sitting there? Wealthy white billionaires. The racial component is starting to show now in various stories about this.
What Colin Kaepernick forced us to see is to make us think about more seriously. He is the fact that race continues to make a huge difference in America. Class is real as well. And if we begin to really understand how both of those factors work, race makes class hurt more.
I've seen stories comparing the National Football League to modern-day slavery. You've seen it. I've seen it. The racial component. It's all there, folks. Everything the left does, everything history has recounted that they do, and everything we know that they do is contained in the last 3 to 4 years of the National Football League. Pete Carroll, coach of the Seattle Seahawks, on Anderson Cooper. Question. Trump said today the protests were disgraceful, saying, I don't think you can disrespect our flag, our country, our national anthem. You think that's really what's going on here, Coach?
Absolutely not. I don't see it anywhere pointed in that direction. What's happening is players are rallying to protest and set out a message that they want to send out. It has nothing to do with against the flag or against the country or any of that. It's the opposite. I think they're talking on behalf of freedom of speech and the Constitution and having a message that they really want to impart on the rest of the people in the country.
I admire Pete Carroll as a coach, but that's just caca. Freedom of speech doesn't even apply here. This is workplace. You don't have the right to say and do whatever you want to at work. Let me ask you this. What would happen if during player introductions a player ran out carrying a Confederate flag? Do you think that, hey, freedom of speech, that guy's got every right to say what he would be thrown out of the league if he got out of the stadium alive? They'd probably have to put him on injured reserve before the game even started for what would happen to the guy. You think there'd be any tolerance for that? Hell no. It's not about that. It isn't about freedom of speech. Remember Kaepernick? This all started, as far as the players are concerned, what they think. Kaepernick laid it out. A country that doesn't treat its people of color fairly and rightly, I don't think I owe that country any respect or allegiance. And that's what everybody's joining. When the flag is flying and the anthem's playing and you take a knee or you sit on the bench, you're not going to convince anybody you're thinking about the Constitution when that happens. What that is doing is exactly what it's supposed to do. It's disgusting people, and it's causing them to tune out the NFL because the objective is to harm the NFL as a business. And it's succeeding. For every fan that boycotts, for every fan that cancels a TV subscription, for every fan that doesn't buy memorabilia or tickets, for every fan that doesn't watch the games on Sunday or Monday night, it's working. And the league, I think, is a clueless entity in the middle of this, as are the players. What interest? Tell me this. What's in it for the players, for the league to lose money? What's in it for the players, for the league to lose television ratings and thus advertising rates? What's in it for the players to lose audience? What's in it for the league for that to happen? And yet, what are they doing? They're behaving in ways that make exactly that happen. It is happening. It's not promoting equality. It's not promoting unity. It's causing division. And division in a big, giant business does not lead to business growth. So they are realizing that what they've done and doing is hurting. I don't think the players want to do that, folks. That's what I'm saying here. There's a lot of dupes in this, including the league and the owners are signing up for all of this. A total misreading and a total misunderstanding of the fan base, the American population, a total misunderstanding and misreading of what these things mean, unity and equality and division.
Just all right.